right. So next up is Björn. He's one of the Prometheus maintainers, and he's going to tell us about Proverbs, which Go has, but why shouldn't we as Prometheus have one too? So, or multiple, I guess. And he has collected a few of them and would like to share. And yeah, let's see what this is all about.
Yeah, you've spoiled half of it. Anyway, before the talk starts, I wanted to add to the news, but I thought I have to talk, so you have to listen to me anyway. Last week I wanted to release Klein Golang 0.9 because people nowadays they like version numbers, which is that wasn't intended when Go was developed, but anyway. But then there was a scary bug in Istio where they have duplicated labels, and I don't understand why. So I'm still scared there's a serious bug in it, and I don't want to do the release after all those years with a scary bug. So, but the tip of master is what should be released at 0.9. So if you're using Go and Klein Golang, just take update get -u something to the current tip of master and tell me if everything works. And I'm still trying to find that bug. Anyway, that was not part of the talk. Now the talk. Prometheus, myths and proverbs. I will actually do the proverbs first. I just called it myths and proverbs because it's like a better metric. Proverbs and myths doesn't roll off the tongue that easily. And as Matthias just said, there are proverbs in Go. There are even proverbs in other languages. You might have typed import this in Python. It's an Easter egg. You can just try it in your Python interpreter, and it prints you the Zen of Python, which of course is pretty well known. So you might have read it on a web page or something. So this has things like that totally apply to Go, I guess. Beautiful is better than ugly. Explicit is better than implicit. Simple is better than complex. And now it gets in. Complex is better than complicated. And so on. This is great stuff, and the Zen metaphor perhaps even makes sense. And I'm not sure if Rob Pike was inspired by that when he gave, in 2015, the year Prometheus got publicly announced. In that year, he gave this legendary talk about Go proverbs. So he said, Go is old enough now, we have proverbs, you should talk about it. And then people were so intrigued by it that they created a web page, goproverbs.github.io, simple, poetic, pithy, and they have all those nice proverbs in Go. And they're really some are not really great, they are true, but make the zero value useful. Yeah, sure. But where's the poetic quality in that? I don't know. I picked a few that I really like. A little copying is better than a little dependency. That really sounds like my grandma is telling me, right? A little copying is better than a little dependency. It's not true. My grandma actually has a radio voice. She wouldn't talk like that. But anyway, clear is better than clever. Yeah, I should think about this. Whatever. I really don't panic. Multiple layers of meaning, or reflection is never clear. This is poetic, right? Multiple layers of meaning, all those things. But this is not about Go, right? This is about Prometheus. Prometheus, many parts of the Prometheus ecosystem are written in Go, so we should totally listen to that. But there's a Go meetup tomorrow. I'm speaking there, shameless plug. I don't know, they don't have a waiting list, they probably just take everybody. I don't know. It's not about Go proverbs. Owen is there. You can ask him. I will not talk about Go proverbs tomorrow, but don't communicate by sharing memory. Share memory by communicating is the most important Go proverb. It will be quoted multiple times. And then you know it's really a proverb. If you just say that all the time, you can't even avoid it. So now this is not about Go, it's about Prometheus. And I thought if Go has proverbs, then we can do as well. And I've actually been collecting those for years, because this is 2015, right? I'm not sure if I started to collect them when I saw this talk, maybe, I don't know. I have, what's the word? canonized. I've canonized 5 proverbs so far, but I mean there are so many more on this Go proverb page. But perhaps this starts a tradition, and you will also collect proverbs, and then we make a website one day. And the website, the Go website, actually has links into Rob's talk. So you'll click on it, and then you get linked into the talk at the location or the time where he talks about that proverb, which is pretty neat. And he gives, like, he updates that talk with more proverbs. This is why they have so many.
Does anybody record this session now?
No. Currently it's recorded, but I don't know. Like, I mean, the original talk didn't have that many proverbs, so we need. If you come up with more proverbs and more talks, we need that. Perhaps. Anyway, so without further ado, there was actually a lot of ado, but anyway, my 5 proverbs of Prometheus. In no particular order, but I chose that first for some reason. It has the word first in it, right? That's not the reason. Instrument first, ask questions later. I don't even know who coined that. For some, I know who coined that. Sometimes I think I coined it, but it might have been Brian or somebody else. I don't know. So this is also, this has to do with a story that Matt told me. Which Matt? Who are the founders of Prometheus?
Matt Proud.
And who's the other one?
Julius Willis.
Julius is here. Matt Proud is not here. But these are the 2 founders. So Proverbs are so great because like they're great for beginners to like get it right from the beginning. But they're also nice for like people, advanced people. And I hope I have a few anecdotes here that even the advanced people enjoy. Matt told me a story, and there might be a myth. Perfect segue to the second part. But at least he told me that. So he told me how Prometheus came to be. And he told me that was not like we write an awesome time series database or something on Alert Manager. This was because he wrote an instrumentation library. He thought, what do we have to do to instrument code properly with a nice data model? I mean, then you have to think already about the data model if you write an instrumentation library, and everything else followed from that. I don't know if it's true. It might be a myth, as I said, which is not exactly false, but we'll talk about that later. But anyway, this is, for me, it's like the genesis moment of Prometheus is instrumentation. And this is why I like instrument first. It's a great thing, right? If you think about other monitoring systems, what's their genesis moment explains so much. Like Prometheus was really data models in an instrumentation library, and then we need to collect those metrics with that data model, so we need a collection server. Then we need to do something with it, we need PromQL. And then you want to create alerts, like you go up the stack. Like Bozoom, which is often compared to Prometheus, and it actually has some spiritual links via Tom Limoncelli or something leading back to Google, whatever. They started with alerting. Their genesis moment was alerts. So alerting, and then how should alerts work? How should we create alerts? And then they thought, okay, but if we want to do this, we need something behind that. And then they worked down the stack. Or Influx. Influx was, let's write an awesome time series database and then think about what we can do with it. For example, monitoring metric space or whatever. Like they all have their genesis moment and work through the stack. And I think it's very important to understand where they come from. So we come from instrumentation, instrument first. But then there's also ask questions later, and this has 2 levels of meaning, and I like multiple levels of meaning. The one is, I mean, back then people weren't used to instrument code. I mean, now it's the new hotness, everybody instruments code for everything, but we had a long way to go to get there. And so this was where people asked, do I have to instrument my code? I think Peter Björn put it on his slide. Do I have to instrument my code? And the simple answer is yes. The Zen answer is, there is no question. You instrument first, and then you ask questions, which is really good, and it's in the proverb, right? But the real meaning, of course, is the way we instrument things. We don't instrument code with like smart, high-level metrics. We don't do a lot of heavy calculation. On the client side, we do very fundamental things. Counters, ideally. We'll have a proverb about counters later. And that's another thing, like you instrument first, very fundamental things, and then you can ask questions later if you can formulate your questions in PromQL. Like you can later do, what's actually my QPS over the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and you can later aggregate, and that's the other meaning, ask questions later. Okay, so much wisdom in one proverb. We are actually not completely faithful to that, because there's a whole page about histograms and summaries on our webpage, which if you haven't learned everything about this already, you should definitely read. There were many questions about it. The original Prometheus didn't even have histograms, we had something called summaries, and it's very confusing terminology because histograms and summaries have a lot of meanings in other monitoring systems. Whenever I say histogram and summary, it's like capital H histogram and capital S summaries. It's like the Prometheus data type. And the summary in Prometheus had this feature of pre-calculated quantiles. Like you could say, please calculate the median and the 99th percentile on the client side, which is totally against this proverb, this whole philosophy, right? You are not asking question later. You are putting into your instrumentation that I want the 99th percentile, and you have to calculate it on the client side, which is heavy lifting on the client side. So it's totally against our philosophy. But this is what we had in the beginning. And later we introduced histograms, mostly for the reason that summaries are not aggregatable, which is also against our proverb, because you cannot ask questions like, what's my overall 99th percentile? And histograms are pretty good. Like, histograms are way closer to that, so you can ask later, what's my 99th percentile over the last 10 minutes, or my 95th percentile over the last 1 hour. All those questions are possible, and you can aggregate at will. Great stuff. But I think it's still not quite there. Like, I was the guy who was fighting for getting something better than our current histograms. For one, you have to choose a bucket layout, which is again against ask questions later, because you instrument your code and you have to think about what's actually my expected latency range. What's my SLO? It's very good to have a bucket boundary at your SLO, because then you can like calculate, am I within my SLO? I can calculate AppDex scores, which is all great. But if your SLO changes one day, it's not 100 milliseconds, it's now 80 milliseconds, you have to change all the instrumentations and to ask that question, that different question later. So it would be great if you just had many, many buckets, but they are expensive. Even with Prometheus 2, you can kill a Prometheus server by having just hundreds of buckets in your histograms. And I would like to have buckets cheaper, or even some small dynamic bucketing scheme. But yeah, that's not quite on our radar at the moment. Anyway, just some food for thought. I promised there's a proverb about counters, and that's counters rule and gauges suck. So that's not even coined by a Prometheus person, a Promethean, as I like to call them. That's coined, I'm pretty sure that's coined by Jamie Wilkinson. Who knows Jamie Wilkinson? Julia? Some people. Okay. So Jamie Wilkinson wrote the Borgmon chapter in the famous Google SRE book. It's like 2 years old now, and this was a very early, like, nice shout out, which is it still on our project page? Probably, right?
Yes.
It's still there, where he said, like, it's so great that you can do all of these things at home with monitoring systems like Prometheus, Boson, Hacker, and InfluxDB, and we just cut it after the Prometheus. Okay, but I think he mentioned Prometheus first for a reason. Anyway, that's Jamie Wilkinson. Of course, he could write that chapter in the book. But before that, I mean, this book is great because Google spills all the secret source. Before that, he wasn't allowed to go to like MonitorRAM and talk about Borgmon. So in 2015, before the book, he talked at MonitorRAM about Borgmon, but since he wasn't allowed to talk about Borgmon, he just talked about Prometheus. There are some similarities, as people say, but he actually glossed over. He just talked about Borgmon, and people were really confused because many things were actually not like in Prometheus, but different story. In that talk, he used that phrase, counters rule engages, in my memory. Perhaps I made this up, but anyway. It's a proverb now. So why do counters rule and gauges suck? That's his original graph, just changed the colors and everything. So the left would be something that people naively do. Like the Apache status module exports how many queries you have served or requests per second. They don't even tell you this calculated over the last minute or 10 minutes or something, which is already a problem. But let's imagine that's your traffic graph. Traffic graph. So you have like little peaks, high frequency data, and if you just like sample it. Prometheus samples that. You can look up Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem. I mean, Uber nerds already know that, of course. I learned this in biophysics. It's like everywhere. It's very important. But this essentially tells you if you sample at a certain frequency, you cannot see any high frequency data in that is like more than half of your sampling frequency. So you see all those peaks and they just get lost in time or whatever. Well, the right side is a counter that just counts your request. And then you can never lose count, even if you sample at a low frequency or you even lose a whole scrape, then you will still see it in your count. Like everything will be counted. You might not know when exactly you served that, but you will never miss that you served a lot of queries in this tenth of a second or something. And you can then later take a rate in Prometheus, ask questions later, right? And then you see how many QPS you have served over 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever you choose. So that's a cool thing, and that's why you never want gauges, and you can see that people like they instrument something and they want to export those high-level things, but then you tell them, no, if you can express it as a counter, use a counter and do everything else later. Which leads us to this next one. This says poetic qualities, and it's mine, I'm pretty sure. First the rate, then aggregate. Which leads us to exactly that thing. When you take a rate, many naive people take that rate first, right? So they convert their counter into QPS, the very first thing, and then they aggregate that. So how many QPS do I have served fleet-wide or over multiple services? Let's sum it up. That works, but if you do it the other way around, if let's first sum up all those counters and then take a rate. We can actually look at this. It's a bit small. Let's see. So this is the right one, right? Sum without instance, rate, request total 5 minutes. Right? That works. First the rate, and then I take an aggregation, the sum. So if I do it the wrong way around, so sum without instance, request total 5 minutes, and then take a rate, luckily, Prometheus doesn't pass that. You get this very weird message, error executing query, pass error at car 45, range specification must be preceded by a metric selector that follows a from QL aggregate expert instead. Experts already know what this is. You're trying to take this range selector on something that is not a metric or rule, and that doesn't work. Luckily, because it's completely wrong semantically. It didn't follow the proverb. Now, of course, if you just try harder, you cannot be stopped by that. It cannot be an expression, but I can try a recording rule. So I create rules, do not try this at home. Job request total sum, like I sum something up. So now I sum without instance all my requests total. Now I have a recording rule, which is just like a named rule, so I can totally take a rate over that. Works, but it's wrong, right? Now, of course, there are some use cases where you want to do this, just not in this specific use case. So there's an ancient book, 2015, it's really an important year, I guess, where it's called subquery support for range selection. So you want to have something where you can do a range selection applied onto an expression without that detour over the rule. And whenever that works, then you have to actually remember the proverb, right? Never do this the other way around. By the way, why is that wrong? Like this is not for Julius or this is for beginners. Does somebody know why this is so horribly wrong?
Because you
Counter
use
resets.
reset.
Counter resets, right? So counter resets is this magic sauce with counters. When you restart the binary, the counter goes back to 0. Like back in the days when we had 16-bit or 32-bit, we even got overflows of counters. We don't get this anymore, not in our lifetime. But this is the nice thing. Whenever something goes down, you realize counter has been reset. So I just keep counting from the Prometheus point of view. And if you sum this all up, every drop will be seen as a counter reset, and it's all completely wrong. Okay, anyway, now we have this part, and this has been revived, so people are actually working on that.
Note that it has a not as easy as it looks label.
Yeah, this is the most important label. Almost every bug in Prometheus. I mean, priority is still P maybe, but not as easy as it looks. It's very important.
What does the P stand for?
P priority.
But it already.
There's P0, 1 and 2, and there's a P maybe.
I mean, P maybe is already great because usually Brian just says no,
Yeah.
and that's not P maybe. It's like, no, this is wrong. So this is not wrong per se, so there are legitimate use cases where you need that, but please not in this like obvious, I count something and then I sum it all up and lose my counter resets and then I take the rate. Okay, let's do the next proverb. This is also, I think I coined this, it has fallen out of grace, but I think it has fallen out of grace because it has one. Labels are the new hierarchies. This has been used multiple times, but it has one because now everybody's using labels. So back in the days, people used like hierarchical structures, it was just great, right? And then they realized, if I want to ask 8 different questions, there we have that again, like in the other direction, and then the hierarchy doesn't work anymore, it gets really expensive. And then I said labels are the new hierarchies because now everybody labels everything. Most importantly, Kubernetes, of course. Kubernetes came up with this ingenious thing to label everything. I think even Borg didn't really have that, right? So this is, this is this example where you just define the servers by saying, okay, everything that's named public API will serve this thing, and that includes, this is named public API, but everything that is called app API and is in production and a canary. Like I have production ports, I have a canary port, which also should receive production traffic. So this is served to the public API, but not this test port, right? So that works great, and you could say this is still just a hierarchy, but then one day you want to say, okay, we have a resource crunch, we want to delete all the test ports, then it's a completely different hierarchy because now you select env equals test, which is like below production or canary. So it's a different thing, and this makes a lot of sense to look at things from the label perspective. This is an example for old style graphite data model where you have this dotted thing, and it's really like hierarchical. This is just a metric which you can totally express in PromQL, of course. And now you have those wildcard syntax in Graphite where you can just say, okay, I want everything, Ampelmann is a system at SoundCloud, in that data center with that IP number, all the metrics, right? Can do that in PromQL, obviously. Just select those. I mean, those labels are also named, which makes more sense. But the other way around, I mean, syntactically you can express that, but that's usually when your Graphite crashes because it has to walk the complete hierarchy for that. It's like a full table scan. And if you have a label-based view of the world and your database supports that, actually, it doesn't make a difference. Whatever direction you look at things, it's same price. Okay, this is Brian's one. If you can graph it, you can alert on it. He used that a lot when he had to sell Prometheus to people who were like, why should I do this, right? Because you have your graphing subsystem, and then you have your alerting subsystem, and they are completely different things. Like you alert with Nagios, there's no dashboarding involved, nothing, and just if a test fails 3 times, you alert somebody. And then you have your dashboards, and you even put like gigantic view screens in your office, and people see something is wrong, but no alert goes on because who would alert on a graph, right? Prometheus makes this so easy because you have those PromQL queries that create a graph, and then you have PromQL queries that create an alert, and it's essentially the same thing. That's great, right? So you play with something, you have your dashboards, and then you think, oh, if this goes over the line, or if that is that slope or something, or hits that value in 5 hours or something, you can create an alert. Arguably, you could say this is, again, where we are not quite up to speed with our own philosophy. And there again, ancient bugs, filed in 2015. All questions have been asked in 2015. For example, this one, which is mostly concerned with this for clause in alerts. Like you can say, okay, I want to have this alert fire if the condition is true for 2 hours. And there was just no way you can graph that. So people wanted some UI for testing full alerting expressions over time. Now we have this in the news, right? There's PromTool with where you can do exactly that. It's not a graphical UI, but might happen because people are working on this now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in works.
It's a work. after like 3 years.
One of the Google Summer of Code students.
Yeah, exactly. Don't spoil my third slide. This is another one from 2015 because alerts also have those templated variables, like those labels you can add, description, summary, or annotations, and they expand. And what you do right now to know what they expand to, you create your alert, you push it onto your Prometheus server, and then you either cause an outage and just check the alerts, or you just lower the thresholds until the alert fires, and then you can see if your description actually looks nice. All of this needs something where you can essentially just graphically inspect that, and I think this is also what we can learn from Bozoom, because they came from that. That was their genesis moment, right? Alerts should be nice, it should be nice to create an alert, explore it, and we're getting there. This is Mr. Codesum. Young Codesum people are joining the project and coding things, right? So he works on both of those issues, and at PromTool, the testing thing is already a step into that direction, but this is also about UI. So all of this will finally happen, which is a great thing. So we are getting, like, the proverb was already there, but we are fulfilling its prophecy right now. Okay, I also thought I should talk about myths, but no, because we had a long discussion how long time I will have for this talk. And then I said, okay, great, 30 minutes, I can do myths and proverbs. But I decided that it's already half an hour I'm talking now, and it's 9 o'clock. And I will just do this in the next meetup because we want to have more of them, right?
I guess so.
If you have a slot, or I do the
Yeah,
one after that. Because we should totally, we should deal with the myth in a proper fashion. Julius was so hyped about the myths.
Maybe a sneak peek.
No, I'll talk about that later.
Aww.
Okay, well, we have 5 proverbs, and I had a lot of things to think about, I think. Thank you. All right.
I came for the myths.
You came from the myths. I'm so sorry. You have to come again. Do we have any questions or something? This was just
They're proverbs. You aren't allowed to question.
What was the even better implementation for histograms?
So I mean, it's like a hot topic of research, and there are a number of mathematical papers I read through that think about how you can represent histograms in an efficient way. And my state of the research is that our model is you want to have this query like, give me the 99th percentile over the last 10 minutes. Well, all those approaches are essentially, there's a point in time, and I collect the histogram with like all the tricks, and from this point in time to now, I will tell you what the 99th percentile is. But if you then ask questions later like, but I only want the last 10 minutes, it doesn't work. And I think there's something I was chatting with, what is it? It's Siegelman. What's his first name? Ben Siegelman. He's like also like doing it's not metrics, it's observability company. He gives many talks about all those pillars of observability and how even if you have metrics and traces, it still doesn't give you anything if you don't have understanding. And he's like a big tracing person. But he also had thought about histograms, and at some point I just didn't have the time and didn't feel like this would be something you could do anytime soon in Prometheus. But and then of course Zirconos, they have their awesome proprietary project. They have like, I don't know, 36,000 bucket histograms or something. They also practice somehow.
Infinite buckets.
Sorry, what?
They have dynamically created infinite buckets.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, they also do this, and it's one of their big selling points, at least for those people who understand histograms. And whatever, it's like super interesting, but needs a lot of work and time, and probably will change a lot. Also, PromQL needs to change perhaps, but I don't know. Like, it's a big thing to get right, and it's for the future at the moment. Our current histograms are not too bad. Like, don't get this wrong. You can do many things, but like we killed so many servers at SoundCloud by people just saying, "Oh, let's have 100 buckets here," and then we have 1,000 instances, and we do one histogram per HTTP status code, and then gazillions of time series, and whatever. Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, this guy.
What do you want to change in Prometheus?
Sorry.
What would you like to change in Prometheus?
Okay, this is getting really complicated. I would like that we like at the moment histograms are just a collection of counters, and then you have those complete. I mean, thanks to Grafana, they will tell you how the query should look like. But all of this should be like a bit more straightforward, I think. It would also not work if your buckets are some kind of dynamic digest or something, which is not really buckets anymore. Then it would change anyway. Also, like counter resets. This is more about the sum field, which is it gets really into like it can go down. It's not a counter reset and stuff like that. But yeah, it's there's a slide deck from Dev. What do we call it? Developer Summit. There are slides somewhere where I kind of explain all those little things. But yeah, will be tough to change that.
KubeCon last year in Berlin, right?
KubeCon in Berlin 2016. Yeah. Okay, there were 17. Sorry.
Is pull is better than push at Proverb or mid?
This this is very controversial, and kind of the kind of religious piece we found was that it actually doesn't matter so much. So I wouldn't put this as a real problem. Yeah, I mean, it would be more about when people.
The myth is pull doesn't scale.
The myth is pull doesn't scale, and the myth is push doesnst scale, right?
Yes.
But this is also wrong usage of myth, which I will explain in my next talk. I think the problem is that when people want to turn Prometheus into a push-based system, and they want to use the push gateway and get really angry if we don't support the use case. That's more the problem.
We need an event aggregator.
That's
That's a myth.
We have
No.
one. It's called the stats exporter.
No, it
Yeah, but there's
sucks.
also
I know
the
it sucks, but
reverse
we have
thing, right?
Yeah.
There's always
there's like
the
multiple,
the
but
push gateway README has the first thing what the push gateway is not, and what you can do instead if you really want to.
Yep.
I guess we will end this now. So thanks everyone for showing up. Thanks to the people talking, and hope to see you in November, I guess, for the next meetup. So it is already live on MeetUp as well, so you can just find the next meetup there. And please feel free to join next time, I guess. Yeah, thanks.